I'm so sorry to disturb you because I can hear that there are lots of very interesting discussions going on. But we have a half an hour of a roundtable session now before it's lunch time. So now I'd like you to welcome back to Nana and Lise from Denmark. And they have brought some friends with them. Bjarke Valtjersson, who is an associate professor at the Department of Arts and Cultural Studies at University of Copenhagen, and Nana Holgaard, who is from the IT University of Copenhagen. So now you have been going to the tables discussing some of these questions that you put on. I ask you the question about what sort of reactions, answers you got to some of these questions that you were discussing at the tables.
Well, I had a really good discussion with the table down here. Hi. I was asked, we had a discussion about the notions of citizenship and maybe maybe I should say that in Danish, and I think maybe it's the same in Swedish and Norwegian, I guess. But we have this, in Danish we say medborgerskab or statsborgerskab. So in English that would be citizenship and cultural citizenship. And I mean, no, that was not what we were talking about, no? No, yes? No, not. But maybe you should ask the question. You had a really good question, Jakob.
No, I had a little problem about, when we are talking about citizenship. I'm from Denmark, and the only understanding of citizenship is a kind of that you are also already there, try to even there define an ownership of kind of location where you are. And therefore, it doesn't give the same sense to me. It doesn't make the sense to me because I would like to have, if you should make any sense, it would be kind of a multiculturality. That would be my starting point. If you have citizenship, even if it's cultural citizenship, my only understanding and the translation is that then you have, as a Danish state, you define kind of an ownership of where you belong. And this is not the best kind of, starting point for inclusion or multiculturality. So therefore I have a problem when we have these questions, and it's about the language. And we have also been talking about here at the table about that if you translate it, I have some very fantastic Swedish colleagues sitting here, and they said, we don't see the problem when it's translated from English. But when they translate it into their mother tongue, Swedish, then they said, now we understand that this is actually a problem with the definition of these things. So this is a very, I think, a very important thing. Secondly, we thought about that SMK was kind of already there, a tool, that the arts would be a tool for the Danish states in the inclusion process and so on, and how do you see yourself in that? So we had quite another perspective, and I think you should be very, very, very focused on that. If we really talk about multiculturality, we need to talk about how we define the questions and how we define the discussions we're having here. So that was the basic concerns from this table.
Thank you. And what we then just discussed a little bit is that when we in the project have been using the notion of cultural citizenship, this has been very much in the meaning of the English sociologue Delante, who is talking about cultural citizenship as an ongoing learning process, which is all the way a kind of an exchange. So it's not something defined, for instance, by a state, but it's something happening, going on continuously all through our life. And that cultural citizenship in this meaning is very much about identity making, sense of belonging, and participation. And that cultural citizenship in this context also contains the notion of multiculturalism, because it's not about a state saying that this is the right form of cultural citizenship, but it's something that's negotiated all the time in the context and in the relations. So of course, and I mean that's always very difficult when you have to do a quick presentation, because of course in some ways it's important to go into details with the notions, because all of a sudden they become very black and white. And I also think it's important to say that both of the notions, they exist all the time. And of course, being a national gallery, we cannot prevent ourselves, when we do work in such an institution, for also being part of this kind of disciplinary citizenship. And then you asked us a little bit about, well, as the museum, do you feel that you are actually used as a tool? And I mean, that's always a very difficult question, because of course some politicians use us as a tool. Of course they do. I mean, we also have this story about Danish history, the Golden Age. We try to ask questions to this master narrative of Danish identity, etc. We also experienced that it became a very big debate some years ago in the newspaper, because some politicians didn't really like that we questioned the notion of cultural national identity. But on the other hand, we very much ourselves define how we will work with these notions. We do, of course, we are state-owned. We are the National Gallery. We are owned by the state. So every 4 years, we do a kind of framework agreement with the cultural minister. But we actually have the possibility to define it very much in our own kind of wishes. So in this way, I actually don't really feel that we are used as a tool for inclusive learning, inclusion processes. But you could say, on the other hand, this is a project funded by the cultural agency. So of course it's very problematic in many ways. So it was a really good question, because I mean, of course we have to be really aware of what words we are using, how are they understood, and so on.
Bjarke, you have not made any presentations today, but you've had your time to go to the different tables and discuss some of these questions. What was your reactions?
Well,
reflections?
in the program, I'm introduced as a critical friend, and that was a bit of a how can a friend not be critical? Because in my view, that's a definition of a friend, basically. But at the sessions yesterday, I was a bit kind of concerned, because I sensed conformity. I sensed a lot of good presentations, a lot of discussions that were more kind of on towards practical issues, more into how are things done, but not so much about criticality. And this is a perspective that I want to add here in a way, because I was really pleased when I went through. This was like a huge focus group, 30 focus groups. I wished I had my recorder with me as well. Then I had a lot of data, because there was a lot of good discussion taking place, and a lot of critical discussion. And some of the things that I will kind of get out of this and correspond to my views is basically that democracy is not conformity. Democracy is a conflict. And I think Chantal Mouffe says it's very nice, because she talks about conflictual consensus. That, democracy is the line defining between adversaries and enemies. And if you can stay at being adversary, that is agreeing or not agreeing, then we are at a good place. And when we are kind of looking at the field of cultural policy, for instance, or the field of cultural production as a whole, that is a power game. And we need to look at it from a specific form for contexts. So when we're dealing with co-creation, when we're dealing with participation or whatever that we've been talking about at this conference, we should be very attentive to the context, because some institutions are more bullying than others. They have more financial security. They are guided by law that says something specific, and there is always a policy guiding that. And there's certainly hierarchy as well. And I was very pleased to kind of, when I got into the groups, I was getting kind of discussions like, well, collections are always political. what kind of history is being told in terms of, for instance, the cases that we were looking at. Cultural heritage is a political project. What are the consequences of engaging with new audiences? So there were kind of open questions and good critical reflections. And at the same point, there was kind of, on the other side, art belongs to everyone. Art is democratic. You should feel like at home in a museum. But I would say that only fits if we see the museum as a field of conflict, as a conflictual consensus.
Any reactions from that? Yep. Can you? Johanna will bring the mic.
Yeah, we also broke the frame immediately at our table. It's a very thick frame on the slide there.
That's how it is to be corporate.
Yeah, that's a very accurate branding strategy. Well, no, we started discussing what the word democracy means because it comes up almost as much as digital at this conference. Of course, it's because in the program and it's a consequence of political decisions. However, there's a tendency that these terms, when they become goals that are determined by funders of culture, that they get stretched because you want to keep your identity when you apply for so you actually have to stretch the definition because otherwise, where's your idea? Because it maybe not stem from the political program. And I feel that you may be somehow involved in the same dilemma as an institution because you have a political program and you're maybe also being used and abused for political means because you are guarding a national heritage. But let's go back to democratic as a term when used in conjunction with art. One of the discussions here was that democratic, when that gets stretched so far, it becomes actually sort of a synonym for participatory art or for inclusiveness or for non-hierarchical. But if you look at democracy, what is at the heart of democracy is that there's a sense of trust, at least within a group, so that you can delegate power. And you are free from choice, at least for a while. I think that's at the heart of the definition of democracy is that you can go about your daily business not being involved in the big questions constantly. And if that definition of democracy has to be applied to the arts, it's actually quite democratic to go to a completely conventional classical concert. You delegate your trust in professionals that perform the best they can. You receive that, you go home, and you are free from choice for a while. I just want to offer that definition as a possible provocation because I think it's also important that when you have a practice and a professionality that you actually value that, and you also value the trust people put in you, and you try to cultivate that trust. And it doesn't go against inclusiveness or any of the many fantastic projects we've seen. I just think it's important that we try not to stretch these adjectives that are from the people who fund the arts too far. Yeah, that was the comment from here.
Yes. Yeah, I would like to answer that question. I don't know if I can answer, but reply at least. I don't think that it was actually the Cultural Institute or the SMK that stressed the notion of democracy. I actually think that what we did was going back into looking at, or what I did, at least in my PhD, going back into looking at democracy, reading a lot about different social sciences, thoughts about democracy. And of course, the representation, the understanding of democracy as representation, that's the most common. But if you ask Rankier, who I'm inspired by, he would say that's not democracy, because that's based on inequality, because we choose some people to represent the rest of us. So he's trying to put on another perspective. And he's doing this on the basis of plurality, and the same as Jean Mouffe understanding that if we live in difference, or we have to live together, but being different. And then it's not a national project, then it's not about nationality, then it's a global project. Then we can open up for another understanding of democracy. And that's actually what we were trying. So, and that's why I call it a thought experience. But I think it's very important that we actually go further, because if we keep on this representing, either we could stuck on what we have been doing all the time, think it's okay. We represent, we choose what is the good artworks, and then we get counted, and we can see that only a few of the population use the art institutions. Then we risk to get caught. So, I mean, we can see what's happening at the universities in Denmark right now. So maybe we should start to rethink that we have maybe another kind of role. And instead of letting the politicians or the people with the power decide it, maybe we should go into raising these questions. So that's actually what I wanted to provoke and raise for a discussion.
Nana, now I want to bring you into what sort of... It's working.
I would really... Is this on? Yeah, now it is. I don't want to... But actually, Lise's question, I think it needs an answer from, or at least some discussion, and I'm not sure that I can answer these questions. I mean, it's sort of you guys who should answer these questions. So, I mean,
but we are running a bit late, so I think it would be great to get your
okay. So the discussions I took part in was not related as such to like different notions of the democracy, but it was more related to how can we understand audience engagement? What is that, and what is that in terms of democracy? Because I mean, there's been a lot of talk of democracy, and very often, at least, I mean, getting more people into the door and having more clicks on the website with a diverse as possible user group, that's sort of democracy. And if you can get people to engage or participate through online or social media, that's sort of also part of the whole democracy idea. And I think in some of the discussions I heard was that, okay, that it has to do with people entering the door. It has to do with selling more tickets, and I mean, when you're, so some of the issues were related to, so if you want to move our collections into the digital or online space, how can we do it as an institution? And so I mean, well, some of the discussion was related to these kind of issues, and a lot of the case presentations I've experienced at this conference was very best practice, like huge institutions with large budgets. As I mean, I know even large institutions as the National Gallery of Denmark has a limited budget, but in comparison to a small provincial museum in Denmark, I mean, it's a huge budget. And in these museums, in these small-scale museums, you'll have the museum curator doing like the research, the educational work, the exhibition design, and also being the developer and initiator of new digital projects, and also trying to get extra funding for these projects. And I mean, that's, so I think like in terms of the entire conference, these best practice cases are good as inspiration, but I think sometimes it can be difficult if you're a small institution to bring home and to change the organization at home. So I mean, yeah, I guess that's.
But I think there is plenty to discuss when we're going to lunch now. But thank you very much to all of you, and then see you after lunch here